On my own lane, we have Miss Lexi. Welcome, Lexi.
Hi
Her and I
guys.
go back to working together for a music news blog, but we had our formal in-person meet or intro at Electric Zoo back in
That
2018.
was so fun.
It was. I actually was fortunate enough to work out there through production, and I had media credentials, so I kind of double dip, wore two different hats. Like I was doing it all that year, that weekend that I was working out there, and you were attending. You attended, and we actually didn't meet up at all, huh? I don't
Dude,
think we
because
did.
I don't think we met up because I think you were like going around with interviews and stuff. And then at some point I didn't have service, which is weird because Randall's Island, you normally have service. But yeah, like if I could go back in time and like we could have like danced and hung out, like I definitely would because
Dude, it would
COVID's
have
hard
been,
right
and
now.
even at the hotel, because you allowed me to crash in your place,
Yeah.
at your hotel room, and even then, that was even hard. I mean, by the time you got back, or we were getting back at different times, and I
Yeah.
remember I think we briefly encountered each other that Sunday before I even went to the airport because I had like an early
Yeah.
flight. But I right from the beginning when I met you, or even through social media, because that was our kind of our first interaction. Your
Yeah.
presence is you shine. It's very strong, and you're a very confident woman, girl.
Thank
Um,
you. I appreciate that a lot. So are you.
thank you. I appreciate that. Has your has your image and ethnic background influenced your identity?
Yes, because back when I was younger, I grew up in the Bronx, which is one of the five boroughs of New York, and coming from like a melting pot of so many people. Like I moved to Westchester County when I was like in sixth, seventh grade, and it was a predominantly white area, and like I was having the biggest identity crisis because it was like trying to fit a square peg in a circle hole. So like for
Mhm.
a while I was kind of like, because I'm Afro-Latina, I'm Black and
Yeah.
Puerto Rican. So like, sometimes I would be like, oh, like, am I more Puerto Rican? Am I more Black? Like, how does it do? Whatever. And then when I got into college, I started like embracing like who I am. And like, even though like there are just a bunch of like injustices that go on with my people, like I just love to just like I love to know where I came from. Like I come from a strong family, a bunch of artists, and like everywhere I can, like I express like how proud of my nationality I am, especially with the BLM initiative as well. And
Mhm.
yeah, dude, I feel like that completely, just like the grit and just like, it's just like flavorful. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah, I
like,
get that.
being Latina and being Black and just like being around like predominantly like, my grandmother and, learning how to speak Spanish with her versus like learning it in school. And like, I always pay homage to like with every, like either it's like my ideas or just like, meeting people I know, like it's just important to keep like, nationality like in the conversation because it's what makes you you.
Yeah, exactly. I think even me you mentioned earlier, what am I? How do I identify? Even as a Mexican American, I hate to reference this. Well, not that I hate it, but it seems like it's constantly being used. That whole Selena scene where it's like if you're in the U.S., you're not American enough or something for being Mexican American,
Yeah,
and if you're in Mexico, you're not Mexican enough because you're American too. So
exactly.
it has that with me. I feel like I identified as because I deal with that. How did social advocacy, since we're talking about Black Lives Matter, um, how did social advocacy spark an interest in you to through the fashion entrepreneurship path?
So what I was like seeing in a lot of like social media, such as like Twitter, like Facebook,
Mhm.
Instagram, I realized like, as we were going into quarantine, we had, I hate to say it, we had a shit bag of a president, which made everything so much worse.
Mhm.
And on top of that, just all the social injustices like happening, and especially with George Floyd, like what made me angry is that there were so many people that was trying to like compare apples to oranges, which, you know, you can't compare, like someone said, like oppression, right? Like you can't pair like other people's oppression because everybody experiences things different. Everybody like kind of just reacts to things their own way. And I was just seeing a lot of like bigotry over social media, and especially from the EDM community, which was completely weird because, you know, we think that we're in like this, which I would love to believe that like, you know, EDM, like the EDM community is still a plur place. It's just like people don't understand the real concept of plur. Mm-hmm. And even when it comes to like people in power that are like, don't resemble peace, love, unity, and respect, it just kind of like, it meshed the lines a little bit because it went from like being a plur community to like being a plur / very vocal about politics and kind of just like basically just belittling people for their own ideas and like not even fact checking stuff. And like, that's kind of what like ignited something in me because I was getting mad because it got to a point where someone was trying to call me racist for telling them about box braids. They're like, really? Oh, so you're the gatekeeper. Because you're Black, you're telling other people not to wear box braids, which is not the thing. Like, it's literally, it's a whole thing. Like, you know, braids represent tribes. Like, the beads represent like different things that people wouldn't know because they're just going to the salon to get braids and they don't know what that means. And especially, you know, like under here, I have very thick, kinky hair. Box braids are to literally get the braids in, and it's durable and it helps your hair grow. And like some people won't know that because if you do it on thin hair, your hair is going to rip off. Yeah. So like I dealt with that. Like people were trying to invalidate me because of Black Lives Matter. Like it was completely insane. Like I felt like I was being victimized for being like Black and being vocal about like, this is wrong, this is that. And in the same token, I was also talking about the kids in cages. Like I was like always like talking about something because it's just like, it's terrible. But then also there was another side where it's like, oh, well, if you're not talking enough, that means you don't care, which also is kind of wrong because some people, as I said before, like people deal with things differently. Like maybe people want to donate and not take a screenshot and be like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm not racist. I donated here, you know? Yeah. It's like a lot of people were doing like activism and it was just kind of weird because it's like, okay, like since you didn't take a picture of it, like, does that invalidate me fighting for the cause because I didn't feel the need to post it? Like, it was just like a lot of negativity and everything. And like, even to myself, like I felt very pressured as well because, you know, like I have, you know, I don't have a big social media presence, but like to like the people that I do, like I inspire, I try to be as transparent and positive as possible and things like that. And sometimes I even felt like a little weird if I didn't post anything. But then also social media is very toxic because it plays this narrative that things are perfect and it's a sanctuary. And I felt like a lot of influencers as well had trouble navigating that space because they were using BLM as like, you know, a stepping stone to post more content, which also was up for debate too. Like that's kind of just a sum of like why I started it with like, you know, like, cause my brand is all about statements. It's making a statement, you know, like it's like being like, I'm not going to shut up when you tell me to shut up. Like I'm going to voice my opinion no matter what you say.
To touch on that, as you know, I work production, I work events, and most of the events I worked are here in SoCal. I remember an event that I worked, and I'm not kidding you. It was really weird to see like an older white male show up and with his MAGA hat, his huge Trump flag. And I'm all like,
what?
I may not be all too familiar with the rave scene completely 100%, but I know that these two things don't align. And it's like, no matter how much you see reality, sometimes it's still mind blowing that to me at times, it's still hard to believe.
Yeah, it's completely crazy just to think like, you know, I feel like it's kind of like a good thing that these things happen because it kind of just exposed you to like, okay, like these people came out of hiding. Like, you know, like you can't be plur if you're just a bigot and you believe in fake news. And, you know, and as I said, like both sides have their flaws, but it's just like the fact that they took it to EDM to be like, oh yeah, like political this, political that, like, you know, like fuck you if you don't like Trump type shit, which was kind of, sorry for my language, but like, it's just kind of just mind blowing to me how like all that happened. And just even so, like how many people I had to defriend.
As an Afro-Latina, like you mentioned, can you please share with our viewers how it is very important to support the Black community, whether it is through small businesses or in other areas?
That's a really, really good question. So I feel like to the users, like, because even so, like thinking about how like big businesses kind of rip off small businesses, you know, it's like a whole like ecosystem, you know? And it's important to kind of just know where your stuff is coming from. It's important to know the brand values of what you're buying from, you know, because, you know, it's really important. Like it could be so easily misconstrued by the media. Like, you know, some people even are like, even like when it comes to like BLM and stuff like that, they completely tried to switch the narrative and try to like call it a hate group. They even tried to compare it to like the KKK. And it was kind of just crazy to me because I was like, it's kind of just like crazy. But like, I mean, as I said, like, you know, I feel like there is a silver lining to everything. And even so, like we all had to go through this like transgression that happened and like, you know, rip all the people who have died because that is just so like, you know, despicable of like everything that happened. Like just seeing like the videos and everything being recorded, it's just like so sad because it's like, you know, like it's just, it like gets me like emotional because it's like, wow, like, you know, like when I was younger, like I never thought I would have a business. I never thought I would, you know, even be eligible to like have a business, and like just having that and just like seeing the amount of love and support, you know, like it just shows you even more like you have to embrace your culture. You have to embrace what makes you you, because if you're going to try to be like what the tabloids like have like what Kim Kardashian, Taylor Swift, like those are not real representations of reality. Like we are the real representations of reality. Like
exactly. Then that's why so actually important. And that's actually why I thought about this idea for my own lane, because I feel like so many of our voices, for example, in the entertainment industry, from girls behind the camera taking pictures or doing the videography to even girls in radio that are behind the mic sometimes go unnoticed. And I feel like, for example, I chose you guys to come on board because I feel like you guys all have something to say. You guys, to me, are inspirational. And I feel like through your experiences or what we talk about here, or what we could talk about here, can motivate future generations and even women our age that are still kind of afraid, like, should I pursue my actual dream of entrepreneurship, start my own brand or experiences? And obviously the realities, because it's not always pretty. It's not always a glamorous life behind, you know, your for example, your Headbanger Ravewear brand.
Yeah. And I appreciate you, girl. Like you're also an inspiration bringing us all on here. Like, you know, like I was in a bad place for a while in quarantine, and like, you know, being able to like start things up and like interviews and stuff like that makes me like hopeful that like things are going to get better. And like, just like you bringing me on, I'm really grateful.
I do want you to touch, I know you mentioned your design racism isn't plur. But I want you to talk a little bit more about that. Like you did touch on it, but why that statement? Why that statement for your design?
That statement for my design, I was all like, as like I was mentioning, like with BLM, I was just getting so frustrated. And like, I was also in this rut where like, as like content creators, like for a while, it was hard for me to make any type of thing because we live in the age of like sensitivity, whether it's something very, very like small or something very, very like large. And like, I'm not here to be like, okay, like, well, how you feel isn't valid. How you feel is valid. Like, I'm here to just encourage that everybody's feelings are valid. But there comes a time where it's like, you know, there were influencers being dragged like for being tone deaf. There were brands. I mean, I'm not going to name the brands, but there were some brands who just continued operations without even making statements, which also that falls on the line of like, that is a big deal, because like if you're a brand that has so many followers and they're people of color and they're not like all just one race, you know, you have to accommodate, you have to make all of them feel safe. And like, it took me a while to adjust. And then like, I was just like, kind of like fed up, and my friend's like, you know, like you need to say something, like, you know, you need to like, you know, I know you're saying something now, but I think you really need to make a shirt. Like just sit down, think about it, whatever. And like, you know, and it was like my best friend, Rebecca Lorenzo, like she's like my momager kind of.
Oh, okay. I love that. I love that title, momager. Who uses it? Ashanti, that R&B.
Her, and I heard it from her. Yeah, and they also call like Kris Jenner a momager. Like,
yeah, I heard that from her too, and I'm like, no thanks.
Yeah. Right, Ashanti's better. But yeah, like, she was like, you need to make something, you need to do something. Whatever you make is going to be amazing. Like, just get off your ass and do it. I was inspired by my Not Your Rave Bay shirt, which was the first shirt that I ever like thought of like on Black Friday 3 years ago. And I was like, you know what? That'd be cool if like, you know, racism isn't. And then I was kind of stuck, and I was like, like, what isn't like racism? Like what, like in the EDM community, if I can just encapsulate like one adjective, one verb, something. And I was like, it isn't plur.
Yeah, no, I definitely like the fact that you're donating some of your profits to some of these organizations. And I remember when I was looking through your website, obviously looking for my shirt to purchase, I saw that, I noticed that. And I'm like, that is really dope. I mean, she might not have a lot, but she's still sharing her gains she's giving back to the community.
Yeah.
I really like that. I definitely appreciate that.
So the organization's called the Black Woman's Blueprint.
It is obviously evident that EDM has inspired your entrepreneurship endeavors. Mm-hmm. What are some of the greatest challenges you've experienced when you started Headbanger Ravewear? Okay, so if you can share some of your greatest challenges, your experiences with this brand.
So when I started Headbanger Ravewear, it was in 2018. I didn't really know anything about business. I was like, you know what? Like, because my mother always said, she's like, you know what? Because she went to FIT, I went to FIT, and she was like, you know, I feel like you're going to get into fashion. And I was like, no, I kind of just want to like make cool ads and stuff. And I went to school for advertising, did that at FIT. So I was kind of like in this realm, because like when I kind of started raving in 2012 ish, I saw Nero for the first time, one of my favorite DJs. And I realized like in the scope, like I was like dressing normal, but then when it came to 2016, like there wasn't really that much emphasis on plus size women rave clothing. And, you know, I made bras by myself. I made my outfits by myself. Like I made, like, I was like into the whole like bra thing, like completely like the E60 glue, like just like literally gluing my bra, probably like huffing so much fumes. And I'm just in this euphoric state because I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to look so good at EDC New York 2016, you know? And like, I realized like so many women were just wearing these clothes, and I'm like, oh my God. And then like, as the years kind of evolved, like 2018 hits, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to make something that nobody else has, and I'm going to look good doing it. I feel like just putting that on my shoulder, like saying, you're not just a brand, like you're somebody, like, you know, obviously like you're someone who like people are going to listen to, like whether it's like one person or like 10 people, like, you know, like you never know like whose path you're going to cross and how they're going to like, you know, how they're going to react, how they're going to like embrace you and things like that. And, you know, and I don't even refer to people as like customers. I refer to them as family. Everybody who buys like Headbanger Ravewear, they're a part of this family. Like, and instead of me sending inserts about 20% off, I'm like, hey, like get to know me more. Like, let's be Rave fam, like all this stuff. And it's just, I feel like it's all about connecting. And I think that was my like challenge, is just trying to navigate the space through all these things happening in the pandemic.
And as I was sharing this with a friend recently, as much as it may sound cliche, people want to hear that you're relatable to them. Like you can relate to them. You're like the girl next door. You know, they want to see that, oh, okay, her ideals, for example, align with mine. I love that, for example, she struggled just as much as I'm struggling. I feel like as cliche as that might sound, people still want to hear that shit.
Yeah,
people still want to hear that shit. And no, girl, my hat's off to you, because even, you know, like I said, when I was in Facebook, like I would see it, like I see your confidence, and I'm all like, me being plus size myself. I mean, I've never, like, I don't mind being thick. Like I don't, I'm not in a place, I'm not in the perfect place where I want to be, I guess you can say. You know, through this whole quarantine, this whole isolation, I've just been focusing on myself. I went through a lot of shit in 2019.
Take like your favorite song, like whether like you're in the shower or getting ready, and you just jam out to the mirror. Yeah. It's literally like something that's so empowering. And also my boyfriend told me about like power poses. So like you just like literally stand in like a pose for like 2 minutes and you're just like, huh, I feel pretty good. Like,
I'm laughing because most recently, like, and I'll share on my Instagram stories too. Like I'll play the music in the background and I'll just start jamming by myself and looking at myself in the mirror. And actually on my Instagram, in my personal Instagram, I recently shared a couple of mirror selfies. And I'm like, I'm really feeling it, like little by little, but I'll get there. It was pretty much the message I was trying to deliver through my post.
Self-love is so hard because it's like you're in the self-deprecating behavior for so long, and then you start to jump out of it. And it's like, you know, it's kind of like, you know, it's not linear. Like recovery in any sense is not linear. It's literally like some days you're going to feel like you're here. Some days you're going to feel like you're there. Some days you're going to feel like you're here. And some days you're going to feel like you're there. And it's just like, just knowing that I'm not alone and that like I have people that I have to talk to about these things, because I know I'm not the only person dealing with them.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that being relatable, sharing your stories was helping you build a solid customer base through your company and your following on social media?
Yeah, because you always have to be authentic, you know? Yeah. And I feel like we're in this age now where like the influencer has to do X, Y, Z. And people don't understand that they are literally going into a same cookie cutter shape versus you doing your own thing, you being as relatable as you can. Because like I notice sometimes like they're really authentic in the beginning, but once they start getting the followers, once they start getting the likes, once they start getting the sponsorships, kind of just dwindles away a little bit, like their authenticity. Because like, you know, now it's kind of being compromised in a bit. And that's something I always promised myself that I would never do, because if you lose your authenticity, like you lose you. You know, your story needs to be heard. Like you need to heal. Like you need to like, and of course, like in your own time, you know, but it's just like, I'm happy that I could be on my social media platform and just be like, hey, I know you don't feel like getting up, but you have to, because you're going to feel so much better if you do. And especially with Instagram, it's not a highlight reel all the time. It's important to talk about your struggles, because it's just not only a reminder of yourself that you grew, but it's a reminder to everybody else that like, you're not as perfect as you think you are.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, before the pandemic, you had a stable job, or what the masses call a stable job. Yeah. What were key points for balancing your work, your life, and even you pursuing your entrepreneur path? What were the key points to balancing all of that? If you were to share with, it's a viewer that wants to go into that entrepreneur path, but obviously still has to worry about having that stable income, that stable job to survive.
I would say when I was working, I would be commuting, and it was like an hour there, hour back. Sometimes I would be so tired to do things. Like having dedicated days to work on things is going to help you so much. Like even if it's like an hour here, 2 hours there, 45 minutes here, even just like research helps a lot, because like research researching things is like what's going to give you your inspiration, whether it's like in my retrospect, like one of my t-shirts or versus like someone doing like a resin piece or something. Like everything takes time. And I remember in college, because I went to go get my master's in business administration. And one of the key things that my professor told the whole class is like, hey, like if you are running a business, it's going to take you about 3 to 4 years to see like some return. Because the first 2 years, you are investing a lot, like whether it's supplies or ad dollars or things like that. And you're also like in my instance, I was sending out free products, and free products over time it's a lot of money,
Yeah.
And it's just reminding yourself that yes, like you have to grind, like no matter how hard it is to give up. Like that's why I always tell everybody, if you're going to start a business, like you have to dip your toe in the water, and then you can't jump in all in at once because you're going to be shocked by the cold. You have to like dip your toes in. And then when you feel comfortable, that's when you jump into it. Because once you're a business, once you're like a business owner and you're not motivated, it's going to be hard for you to stay motivated if you're biting too much that like you can't chew.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of things can get discouraging if things don't go well the first time, people get discouraged immediately. And it's like, and that's why, like I mentioned earlier, that's why I want to make sure I present that the realities, the harsh realities behind the scenes are not always, they're harsh. So it's not all going to be pretty.
Literal blood, sweat, and tears. But
exactly.
Fight off one individual monster at a time. Like you can't take it all in at once. You have to kind of just break it up into tasks. And me like dedicating stuff on the weekends like helps, because like I can and I'm a night owl, so like I can literally stay up all night. You're going to feel like you're fucking up a lot. But in reality, you're not doing so bad, because if you think about it, like life is about trials, like you're always getting thrown challenges at you, and and you can get through it. Like you can get through it. It's going to be so beneficial in the end because it's yours. Like nobody can take it away from you.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that, because that's definitely what, like I said, I want to make sure that people hear these kind of things through our guests. How do you think the world of fashion is doing as far as inclusion goes? And furthermore, do you see yourself modeling or collaborating with the brand in the near future?
That is a really good question. Like, especially like with our world, like the earth is precious, like global warming is a thing. And like just seeing these brands do these initiatives with like eco-friendly, environmentally friendly, like it's just a step in the right direction. I think them modeling like with like, just like diversity, like I've seen like after BLM, like I've seen certain brands become more inclusive, but sometimes it kind of gets to the point where like they're making it overly obvious that they are just pushing just for diverse. Like, and, sometimes it's just apparent, like, as I said, like genuine versus ingenuine, like, authentic versus inauthentic. Like there's some brands like in EDM that I won't mention that like are still not being diverse. And like, let's take, for example, you probably know the one that I'm talking about. Like the owner literally doesn't really care. Like it doesn't really want to stop and think about how, stealing ideas and how not giving homage to the communities that gave them those ideas. They don't care. They're just money makers. And that's the difference between small businesses and big corporations, because small businesses, like you pay $50, you're getting a sticker, you're getting some candy, you're getting this packaging of like literally a custom note. Like it's just completely crazy. And these brands, like, you give them all your money. They're not even being like inclusive. you're like, why the fuck am I shopping with you if I don't see anybody who looks like me? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And that's like in the beginning of like my rave journey, that's how I felt. I was like, I don't like the fact that I don't see people like me. Don't like the fact that like, if I get an extra large somewhere, it really fits like a large, like how is that like on me? Like when your sizes run small and like, it has to be inclusive, like whether race, size, and even when it comes to like people with like disabilities and people with ailments and things like that. Like it just like when you're talking about like diversity, like it's literally has to be everybody as a whole, because there are people like in some aspects that don't feel included by like Nike and certain like things. But like, I feel like hopefully within time it gets better, because I mean, I feel like brands have time to learn, to grow, but it's in their actions on if they really grew and if they really learn from their mistakes.
What does success mean to you? What does success mean to you, girl?
It's funny because before our like, get together right now, I was like talking to my boyfriend about the meaning of success. And like the question kept popping up like ever since I came down here about like success and things like that. And I was like, damn, this is a very philosophical question in general, because it's like everybody like, and this is what I like realized through the pandemic, like this pandemic has shown me that everybody lives in their own little individual universe, which their universe, like they experience different things. They deal through different things. They have infinite goals. They have like destinations that they want to go to. They have all these things. And like, I feel like success is in the eye of the beholder, whether it's like, someone could be just successful getting up in the morning, doing philanthropic work, or someone could be successful in a Fortune 500 company, or someone could just be successful of seeing their children happy. Some people define success as money. Some people define success as, like losing weight or getting over an addiction or disorder or something. And I guess I just want to tell everybody that like, like success is in the eye of the beholder. And like, you may not think that you're successful, but internally you're fully successful because you're here, you're alive, you do have a purpose. Like you just have to find it, and it's okay. Like, and it just depends on the people that you come across. And like, I was also learning about the law of vibrations and the law of attraction and things like that. And that's also a big thing too, because, maybe through these certain books and, shadow work and things like that, like people can find what makes them truly successful. And to me, what makes me successful, what my definition of success is, being able to be one with yourself, even though you are like your own worst enemy. Being able to kind of overcome what that little thought in your head is saying, that you can't do it, or like you're not pretty enough, you're not thin enough, like you're not good enough to do any of this, and just being able to fight it every day, being like, fuck you, negativity. Like, I don't need you. Like, that's what defines me as successful, because when I am happy, everything else comes a little easier for me.
Everything else flows. I think this question is very, to me, and I think this is good. This is moving forward is going to be my signature question, because being in the area of work that many of us are in, I feel like our definition of success is so different from, like I said, thank you so much for answering that. Thank you so much, because you definitely nailed it. And why I ask these kind of questions, or why I ask this question. And I want to thank you so much, Lexi, for joining me in my own lane. I definitely think that you are a definition of a woman that is created her own lane, as well on her way to success. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you.